keeping on this theme of misery, we should bring in Michelle Obama, a miserable person, apparently a miserable person. And we have a clip ready to go of Michelle Obama on her podcast. I know you guys watch, I wouldn't say every episode, but most episodes of Michelle Obama's podcast. Try not to miss an episode of what she does. But she has a podcast. She was talking about her children, got asked a question. Let's roll this clip, and I want to get your guys' response.
It's about what he needs as a grown man in the world. That would be...
You should have threw a boy in the mix.
I would. I'm so glad I didn't have a boy.
Yeah.
Because he would have been a Barack Obama.
It was like baby Barack. It would have been amazing.
No, I would have felt for him.
I don't want to have a boy. He'd be like my husband. Wonderful. Now, I want to connect this, follow me along here, with the New York Times headline that went kind of viral over the weekend. It's just, men, where have you gone? Please come back. Incredible headline. One that could have been predicted. Now, a part of a quote from this article is, quote, "We have moved into an era where many men no longer seek women to impress other men or to connect across difference. They perform elsewhere, alone. They filtered us out. We're still here. Those of us who are willing to co-create something true, we are not impossible to please." False. As a woman, false. We're not asking for performances. We are asking for presence, for courage, for breath and eye contact, and the ability to say, I'm here. I don't know how to do this perfectly, but I want to try. Inez, does your husband make eye contact with you? If not, why?
He makes eye contact with me every day, usually to tell me that I'm wrong about something, and he's usually right. No, I mean,
to stop shopping and shut up.
The number one, I feel like, rule in marriage, maybe it's not the number one rule, but it ought to be up there, which is that you're only allowed lighthearted jokes in public, right? And that's what makes, I think, this interview so uncomfortable with Michelle Obama. It is really uncomfortable and wrong, frankly, to see somebody insult their spouse publicly. What does that say about you, first of all, that you chose this person, right? And frankly, Michelle Obama has so little grounds on which to do this. Like Hillary Clinton, nobody would know who she was if not for her husband, which is a very strange position to be lobbying, insults at her husband and sort of, I mean, this is really insulting. Like nobody should say this about their spouse. It says a lot about them if they say that in public. But the New York Times article, the reason I was looking down a minute ago is because I wanted to pull out a line from this New York Times article that you're referencing. And that is, maybe no one taught you how to stay. Maybe you tried once and it hurt. Maybe the world told you that your role was to provide, to perform, to protect, and never to feel, which just to me stuck out in this article as exactly the wrong attitude. I feel like there's a deluge of pieces that go viral the New York Times Modern Love section is a great, bastion of these kinds of pieces that go viral and spark conversation online. But I would translate all of them as, our husbands are bad because they're not women, right? Because they don't process information, or they don't bond in the same way, or they don't communicate in the same way. It's the premising of a feminine style of communication. And I think this is a broader political issue. It's one that J.D. Vance touched on during the election with his childless cat lady comments and about misdirected female energy. But I think it's something that
that's my band name, by the way.
Talks about with the
misdirected
Longhouse.
Female energy playing at Bonnaroo. Yeah,
right. And I think that actually is a very important lens. It's not the only lens, but a very important lens that we should be looking at our politics through, because so many of those institutions that have been losing trust have within them, whether that's in a private sector in the corporate world or whether that's in government, have, if in many cases just a female majority, but even in the cases that they don't, this kind of feminine cast to them. And that's I don't know, it stuck out to me in this article that she was saying basically she's dismissing the role of men while complaining that they have disappeared. But in the very same piece that she wrote where she's complaining that they disappeared, she's basically saying the unique things that men bring to the table vis-a-vis women are useless and to be dismissed and are just something that they're quote unquote taught.
Rachel, I have to know if you are properly directing your female energy, but also as a boy mom, you are a boy mom. Tell us why, or if you agree with the premise that I think Inez and I are getting at here, which is that men, particularly by people culturally on the left, who have dominated a lot of these conversations, shaped and driven and influenced a lot of these conversations for multiple decades through academia, the media, Hollywood. If they've actually been, are they now regretting what they've done to men? It seems like maybe it's subconscious, not conscious. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, first I have to go back to this idea that I listen to Michelle Obama's podcast on the routinely. I do that only when I can stack it with episodes of The View, and it's when I really feel like I need to like do penance for something. Then I watch them together. Anyway, yes,
it's a good strategy.
My two sons are sleeping upstairs, and this is something I really never considered until I was blessed with raising boys in this kind of environment, because that piece is just, she's missing men. She's all of the institutions that you mentioned are reaping what they have sown for decades. You have told men for years it is unacceptable to be a man, that being a man is the worst thing that you could be. In the intersectional pyramid, men are like the concrete on which the pyramid stands. There is nothing defensible about them at all. And when you spend years telling people this, what do you expect? Right? What do you expect? It's not just a political question at this point. It's the psyche of the men who are raised in this environment to hate themselves, essentially. And I think that it's a challenge, frankly, for parents to raise boys with the self-esteem, but also, the respect that's, you treat them you teach them how to treat a woman, to be respectful, and how to talk to them. I talk to other parents whose kids are older, and there's this just plague in high schools now where boys are even too scared to go up and ask girls out on dates. This is a product of the modern culture that we've created about what it means to be a man, and I think it's a huge problem for us going forward. And sadly, when I think about more than I ever wanted to, but here we are.
Yeah, so I mean, people like us have been having this conversation for at least 20 years. I mean, more like 30 years. And I mean, even before that, if you go back to like the great Phyllis Schlafly. But my college job was working for Christina Hoff Sommers on the re-release of a book that she came out with in, I think, 1999 or 2000 called The War Against Boys. And I think you were about to say that the left is kind of reaping what it's sowed. I agree with that. And I wonder if it feels like this is changing, because the whole like podcast bro slur that's been tossed around by the left as they seek to reacquaint themselves with some of these men that they've lost and kind of force themselves to talk to some of the men that they've lost, that requires like crossing a bridge. I don't think a lot of them actually want to do. And I read this piece as maybe flirting with what it would take. I don't know, Inez, what do you make? Like, do you think that they'll be able to successfully reconnect with men, to bring men back into these spaces so that they can have male eye contact? Is this in the future?
No, I really don't think. I think
you're just like no.
The pitch, it's pretty clear.
Always such a beacon of light.
Yes. No.
The pitch they're going to end up giving, I think, is one that is really sad, but it's the only one that they can consistently give with their deeply held worldview and principles, right? Which is they're going to offer endless, unrestricted porn, online gambling, right? And they're going to take that case to young men and say, well, you don't want Republicans to stop you from doing these things that are, I think increasingly people realize they're at least somewhat bad for you. Right, they're vices.
Don't forget the AI girlfriends. I feel like that's a thing of the future too.
I mean, yeah. In some way that's worse, because it's the like emotional connection that you should find with another human being. And by the way, it's not just sexual relationships that are in collapse. We know that the younger generation is not having as much sex as past generations. They're also not dating as much, et cetera, et cetera. The sex wars are endless and ongoing all the time. But I think missing in a lot of that is the collapse of friendship, of in real life, hanging out. Just it's hard to make a connection with the opposite sex if you don't even hang out with the opposite sex, and feeding into that as fewer and fewer people have siblings, right? So the number of relationships that people have, even the non-sexual relationships with the opposite sex, has really declined. So, I mean, yes, they're reaping what they sowed. I don't know that they really have a way to pivot. A lot of the outreach, quote unquote, to men, as cringy as it is, it reminds me a lot of that brief moment, and you talk about this all the time, Emily, after the 2016 election, where the New York Times was like, we must send at least one reporter to fly over country to see what all these people are about, right? It reminds me of that, but I don't think they're fundamentally going to be able to change. And frankly, as a political party, I'm not sure it makes sense for them to, because their largest constituency are single, unmarried women.